Welcome to the Kingmaker Journal, something that I have developed for myself and that I gift to all the people that I work with, all my clients, because it's very useful. I think we need three things to be successful in business. I think we need energy, physical, mental energy. I think we need that. I think we need the ability to be flexible and to flow, remain flexible. And we also need structure. And you can kind of imagine these as a Venn diagram with circles, and too much energy without any structure and without any ability to flow is chaos. Usually that's not the case. We usually have low energy, which obviously doesn't get anything done. Too much flow, again, without any structure, chaos. Too much structure without any flow, and you've got rigidity. And when corporations, businesses become too big, sometimes that happens as well. So most entrepreneurs, if you're anything like me, you probably lack the structure. So this is really about focusing on getting the structure both into you as an entrepreneur, into your life. And because again, we have different plans. We've got most people, if they have a plan, they've got a business plan, but they don't have a life plan. And so this is for you to think about your life and your business as an extension of you. And you will probably have a business plan if you have a team. You'll probably need a business plan separately. So for the time being, this is for you as the entrepreneur. Wherever you're at in business, if you've got a team or if you haven't, it doesn't matter. You can use this for you. And if you're a solo person, if you're a solopreneur, then you could probably wrap your business into this also. So just to consider that as you go into this. If you're a client of mine, then you are probably, you're stepping most likely into an initiation. Initiation is about understanding who you are, why you're here, and the journal helps you with that and helps you stay on track with what you're trying to achieve. And the first question really is about that, because most of us are living somebody else's definition of success. If you've heard me speak about the suicide bomber, I interviewed a suicide bomber, and how does he become a suicide bomber? It's fascinating, really, when you think about it. It's horrendous. Well, he is handed a story about who he is, and he's handed that story repeatedly, and he's brainwashed, and eventually he really believes it, truly believes it, and he goes off and he becomes a suicide bomber, and he blows himself up. It's pretty extreme, right? But reality is we're all brainwashed in some way, and it's not about if you're brainwashed, it's how you're brainwashed. And your version of success may be somebody else's version of success. You may think that you want loads of money. You may think that you want a massive house. You may think that you want a nice car. And I can tell you from experience that sometimes when you get those things, there's no feeling of elation. There's no feeling of joy that comes with those things. And so sometimes you need to learn that lesson yourself. Literally, you might be listening to me going, "No, Ben, I really do want a big house," and there's nothing wrong with it. I live in a lovely house, and I did have a nice car, which was nice, but it didn't bring me that much joy. And actually, now I have an old truck, which is way better. I love it way more than I loved the new Tesla. I do miss the kind of self-driving thing, but it doesn't bring me joy anywhere near as much joy as being with my son, having a great relationship, being in good health. Like just even being in my garden brings me way more joy than having a nice car does. So think about that, and also spending time in the mountains, spending time in nature for me brings me a lot more joy with other guys, with other people. That brings me a lot more joy than being on my computer working from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m. at night, which I used to do quite regularly. So I really shifted my version of success. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. You'll get to what that is for you, and to be honest, a lot of the times just asking the question will invoke the answer. You don't need to know it immediately. And the idea behind this journal is that you'll revisit it every 90 days as you would in your business plan. So here we go. This is the journal. This is the Kingmaker Journal. The reason it's the Kingmaker is because For most of my clients, you're male. There will be the odd female. You can just replace it with the Queenmaker. But the point that I'm trying to make here is this is about becoming a self-led leader before you become an effective leader of others. Most of us don't have any leadership training whatsoever. And initiation is about understanding who you are and why you're here, and about leading yourself. And you will be able to lead others much more effectively once you can lead yourself. So this is a tool that you can use to just create that leadership for yourself. It's really very essential. This is the blazon. You're going to learn a little bit about the blazon here. The oak, there's also lots of signification, but historically a blazer existed so that a man's conduct, authority, and responsibility could be recognized and held to account even in his absence. They described not what had been proven, not what had been hoped for. A blazon is not branding, a mark. It is a mark of commitment to a certain standard, an ordeal passed, a burden accepted. So once you pass your initiation, you might get this blazon as a little pin or something that you can wear, and it's to remind yourself of like what you've achieved, and there's lots of signification in there. So you can read a little bit about that. The forbidden topics in the community: we don't do any blame stories, we don't do any victim identity, we don't do any therapy language, we don't do spiritual bypassing, so we don't say everything happens for a reason unless we're actually going to see the reason, or you're just trusting the universe without taking any action. I see this one a lot. We're not here to be hyped up, pumped up, or waiting to feel ready. We are going to take some actions regardless of how we feel, but also acknowledge how we feel, and that is important still. There's no comparison, no competing for status in the community of guys here. Storytelling to impress, inflating achievements. You see this a lot. We don't fix each other. We don't give advice unless we're asked for it. We don't coach peers without permission, and we don't diagnose others' shadows. We also don't do escape fantasies, which means when you say things like, one day when things calm down, I'll be happy, or one day when things calm down, I'll work on myself. External wins as a solution, future success as a substitute for present integrity. So focus on the now. Yes, it's great to have big plans and big visions and big ideas, but focus on where you're at now. Be like a realist. Reality makes a difference. What is always welcome is the truth cleanly stated, ownership without drama, behavioral accountability, clear requests for a challenge. I want to be challenged. I want to be held accountable. Willingness to be corrected, something to remember. Something to remember. If a topic moves power away from the man, it is rejected. If it returns authority to the man, it's welcome. That's the kind of essence. And there's some people who really struggle to see their current reality, and they need to sit with someone and have it explained to them. The gates that you move through, and it won't happen necessarily always in this order, but you should understand this by now if you've watched any of my other videos, but you've got the warrior, the magician, the lover, and the king. These are the archetypes of a man and a woman. They're the same, it's just the queen. And it can go, there's other schools of thought on this, but this is the one I like to use just for simplicity. So to begin with, we're putting in the structure for the warrior. The king provides direction, the warrior gets stuff done. So the king is giving the structure and the direction for the warrior to execute on things. So that's just something to think about as you're moving through. Once you've got the structure and once you're getting things done, you're not procrastinating anymore, you're not burning out, then you can move into the magician. The magician is the awareness, strategy, insight. So you can start to think about scaling whatever your business you're building. You can you can go deeper into love. You can go deeper into your relationship, whatever that might be. You can build a greater business. The lover is the part of you that becomes fully alive, emotionally present, and connected to yourself without losing yourself. And then the king ultimately is taking on bigger challenges. He becomes the sovereign. He is not looking externally for any approval. He is taking on missions that are bigger than himself. And most of us try to do the king before we've got any of this other stuff in place. So that's really just important to remember. So keeping the kingdom in order. Well, we need to start with some audits. So we need to really take a good look at what the kingdom is. It's got many moving parts: your body, your mind, your work, your family, your relationships, your finances, your energy, and your time. Any part of that that gets neglected will fall into disarray, disorder, and the king brings order. So you're bringing order to your life, which is your kingdom. The king doesn't need to do everything himself, but he is responsible for everything. So your role is not to micromanage chaos. Your role is to rule the kingdom from your grounded, clear, and focused place. And I've lived in various environments where excuses are just not tolerated. And I've spoken to many entrepreneurs, and some of them are living in a bit of a fantasy world, to be honest. There's a bit of a Walty-Mitty-ness going on where they've got these massive ideas about what they're going to achieve, and they're not looking at the reality of what their situation is. And I'm all for big visions, but I'm also for grounded reality. So I've worked as an intelligence core analyst for 22SAS, and there's no bullshit that flies there. So I want to take that same idea and give it to you guys. So the first thing that we're going to kick off with is the record of victory. Now, before we go into that, I want to say one last thing, which is that a lot of people say that starting a business or being in business is the greatest personal development journey you can go on. And I partly agree, and I partly disagree. I think the greatest personal development journey you can go on is by really taking your personal development seriously. There's a lot of bullshit out there. I've done a lot of the bullshit personal development stuff. I have been working at the wrong level for a long time. Most of us are working at the level of behavior, what to do to get the result. And when we don't get the result, we assume that we're broken, and we assume that we just can't do the behavior. There's something wrong with us. And so then we learn about mindset, and then we learn about how to think. And yet we still don't think that way. And then that becomes frustrating, and we just kind of chuck it all out the window. And the reason there's a lot of bullshit is because it's very easy to sell what to do to get a result, but it's not easy to sell who do you need to be to get the result. So everything that we're about to talk about now is about who you're being in your identity, because your identity is the key to all of this. Who you're being, who you're showing up as, and who you're creating yourself to be is the key to anything you want in life. So quick example, one I use all the time. I was once a smoker. In my identity, I was a smoker. I didn't want to be unfit. I didn't want to have unhealthy lungs. I wanted to be fit and healthy. And I did, and ran an Ironman. So I went from being a smoker eventually to being an Ironman. And when I was being an Ironman, I showed up very differently. I did my training. I sorted my nutrition out. I went to sleep on time. I did all of the doing things that I needed to do to get the result. But it flows. You don't think about it quite so much. It's not a question, because you're an Ironman. You're in your identity. You're an Ironman. That's what you're doing. And so who do you need to be to create the results that you want to create in your faith, in your family, in your finance, in your fitness, in your fulfillment? We're going to talk about all of these areas of life. And it's really like, if there's just one thing that you learn from all of these videos, it's who do I need to be and how do I create myself? Because as a smoker, I was the architect. I was creating myself through my words. Your words are so important. Don't underestimate the power of your words. I did for a long time. If I say that I'm a smoker, people hear that. That's all they know about me. They tell someone else. That person now knows me as a smoker as well. But I started the chain. And they reflect it back to me like, Ben, do you want a cigarette? I can do exactly the same thing as being an Ironman, as being a world-class coach, as being a successful entrepreneur, as being a great leader, as being a great husband, as being a great father. I can do all of that. I can create all of that. The problem is that we have loads of bullshit in our minds, loads of stories that maybe are not true. And part of the process of initiation is about understanding what is true and what is not true, and what is useful and what is not useful. Because some things you may really identify to be true about you, but they're still not that useful. And I put it to you that um, most things that are not useful are probably also not true. And so you just have to trust me on that one for now, if you're new to this. But you don't see things as they are. You see things as you are. So you're gonna learn a lot about how you're seeing the world and the filter through which you're seeing the world. And if you're not getting the results you want, which is probably why you're here, you want different outcomes, you want a better relationship, you want a better fitness, you want better business, then you've got to change the filter you're seeing the world through. Now, hopefully that if you're watching this, you're also working with me in a one-to-one capacity, or you're working with me in groups, you come to the men's camps, because those opportunities allow me to personalize what I'm talking about to you as the individual, allows you to do some really specific work on your shadows, on your limiting beliefs, on whatever's holding you back, you break through some of that stuff. Because once you do break through it, your whole world shifts, and everything is, you create these completely different realities. It's quite incredible. Once I realized that I wasn't a smoker after all, it was much easier to stop smoking. It was completely different compared to trying to do the thing to stop smoking, vaping, patches, chewing gum. Like, all of those were doing things, but it wasn't stopping me being a smoker. I was still being a smoker. So that's how I was showing up in the world. So I hope all that makes sense. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next section, where we're going to talk about why the wins are so important, and recording your victory is such a fundamental important thing that you need to do, I think, as a human, but let's just say as a business owner, it's also very important. All right, lots of love, and I'll see you in the next module.